Hi, I'm Dr. Stu Hoffman, president of ChiroSecure. I wanted to make sure that the lessons I created for you were more than what you would have ever expected, which would probably be the typical, somewhat dry and scary topic of malpractice insurance. This is how much coverage you need and this is why you need it, etc. I wanted it to have real impact. And I wanted you to experience what really goes on in the world of chiropractic malpractice. The issues that cause my phone to ring every single day. The issues that you yourself may one day experience. So I created 7 special lessons for you from my experience as a risk management expert for over 27 years. You're going to hear about situations you need to watch out for, how to handle certain situations, and the expected outcomes. Most importantly, you are going to hear stories, real stories, from doctors just like you who are on the front lines every single day. Some of the stories will actually surprise you, and some will make you wonder what docs were thinking when they did some of these things. What I hope all of them do is to help you realize that we are all human, and with great things come great responsibilities. And I believe that these 7 lessons will help you better deal with these responsibilities by lowering your risk while still maintaining your practice growth. So I look forward to your feedback and to any questions that you may have. Hi, I'm Dr. Stu Hoffman, president of ChiroSecure, and I'm here to help you with your understanding of malpractice insurance. So many people find it a little confusing as to what they need to purchase, what they even have if they've already purchased, and how to make sure that they safeguard themselves and their practice based on their own insurance coverage. So I'm hoping to demystify some of this information for you today. And what I want you to start to understand is why even have malpractice insurance? Malpractice insurance is something that I think is essential in today's environment. Some people think it's a choice. I think it's a responsibility. And if you understand that a patient can sue in this day and age for anything, there are attorneys that will take the most frivolous things and send you legal papers. And that's all because the patient thinks that they were wronged or received some sort of a negative outcome to their treatment. Insurance just simply helps manage that risk while protecting you and your practice and your family from huge legal expenses from these potential payouts. But even more than the payout, a doctor will say, well, if I didn't do anything wrong, once I defend myself, it'll all go away. Well, maybe, maybe not. But either way, it's so important to understand that the number one concern we have in the chiropractic medical legal realm is a stroke claim. And stroke claims can easily add up in the defense to go from 100,000 to 200,000 easily just to defend the doctor. So we don't want you in peril just because someone decides they don't like you or they don't understand what you've done, or the communication may not have been as thorough or as clear as possible. So I want you to have your insurance and not be fearful and be able to take that insurance and simply just put it away. So there's a new generation of malpractice insurance in the chiropractic world, and my job is to simply raise your awareness when it comes to the changing trends in malpractice. Some of the most common triggers are actually board complaints, licensing board, things like advertising, whether it be that you advertised and forgot to add chiropractor to your name, whether it be that you have things that aren't even patient-related issues, where an insurance company may make a complaint about you. You can have things that would manifest from maybe you took a seminar And maybe in that seminar, they said, start advertising this, you'll get all kinds of new patients. Well, that may be true, but what they gave you to advertise may not have been vetted to be okay in your state with your state licensing board. You can never have things like, well, I can help you where medicine can't, or I can definitely help you. These are guarantees, and they're things that licensing boards don't like. And our job is to help defend you if any of these licensing board issues come up. So it's important to understand what your coverage is for things like that. Insurance audits. We're in a day and age where insurance companies have a whole industry within the industry to come back and do what we call post-payment reviews. These reviews are something that I have a big concern about, but the doctors are getting asked for a lot of money back after the fact. And we saw this coming back in 2005, and we're the first group to ever add into our insurance policy defense protection for the doctors to be able to fight back against these insurance companies and not let an allegation from an insurance company cause your practice to go up in smoke. We don't want you to go belly up just because of an allegation that you were overpaid by an insurance company. So we help you manage that risk. And we find that lack of communication is a big issue, and informed consent helps with that quite a bit. And we offer informed consent information out to all of our doctors. In fact, at the end of this talk, I'm going to offer you our informed consent packet so that you'll be able to not only communicate with your patients right off the bat, you'll be able to educate them, answer any questions in a professional and non-threatening manner, because I don't want you to ever be defensive with your patients. I want you to be educational. And our informed consent is all designed for that. And I'll make that available to you today. But we also deal with billing disputes with patients, people that want refunds from their care. Where our number one issue in terms of actual injuries is rib fractures. We don't want you to be breaking people's ribs. If it does happen, I want you to know how to handle it best. And through our series, we're going to get more involved in some of these issues, but I just want you to have an understanding of where we're going with understanding your own insurance and why you need it. And failure to refer is another big issue out there. So there are other types of claims. As an example, you can have a claim where you're named even though you didn't do anything with that particular patient. It's called vicarious liability. And that liability could put you in harm's way based on another doctor that you may have in the office, or an owner, facilitator, whatever it may be. But you may not have caused an injury, but you still may have risk. And that's what we need to address. Let's talk about poorly maintained equipment malfunctioning that can injure a patient. I'll give you an example that everyone laughs at it first, but then they realize how serious it can actually be. We actually had a claim of a doctor that had their finger caught in the headpiece of their adjusting table. This is many, many years ago. And we settled the claim. The table manufacturer took some responsibility. We took some responsibility because the patient actually had the tip of their finger chopped off. And when all was said and done, the insurance company did not want to keep this doctor on as a client. And I said, why would that be? We didn't pay out that much money considering. And they said to me, well, Dr. Hoffman, do you understand that in deposition the doctor indicated that this was the third patient that had their finger caught in the same headpiece? I said, no, I had no idea. So we resolved that issue. But we had another issue And I always say, never, ever, ever let boys, meaning men, in a room with toys without supervision. So this doctor had this patient in a room with a Cox table. And for those of you that don't know, a Cox table is traction. It goes up and down on both sides, and it needs to be locked. Well, the patient goes in, they're all by themselves, they're playing around. They hear someone coming and they jump up on the table. And it was right in the middle of the table, and the table springs up. And they chop their testicles right in the center. It's crazy, but it was a serious injury where the patient actually needed surgery on their testicles, and we paid out about $125,000. So these are things that can happen if you're just not careful with your surroundings. So let's talk about judgments. What if you didn't have insurance and you had a malpractice claim? People say, well, what are they going to get from me? Well, it's not necessarily what they're going to get from you today, but they can get it from you tomorrow, because it is very, very difficult to bankrupt your way out of a malpractice judgment. And a judgment with you, therefore, would stay forever. And if you don't fulfill that judgment, it can get passed on to your heirs with your estate. So why would you do that to yourself or anybody else? Because I sure hope that even if you don't have the means today, that you plan to be successful enough in the future that people are going to go after that money. And the same holds true that if a judgment is for more than what your actual insurance limits are, like you have the least amount of coverage just to fill a state requirement or something to that effect, and there's a judgment for more than that, you're still in that same boat of being on the hook for more than what you should be, and therefore the same issues come in about bankruptcy and everything else, because you're going to have to pay it out. An example, years ago, I had a client and a friend in a state that, a lot of us 35 years ago were taught, have the least amount of coverage. The less you have, the less they'll sue you for. But that's something that was true then. It's still true to an extent, but not so much anymore. And I want you to understand that he got sued and had a $100,000 policy. He went through that. The settlement was for about $175,000, which we both felt he got off easy, but he still owed $75,000 that he had to deal with out of his pocket. So read your policy. Most policies require reporting in a certain time frame. Some policies are really tight on that. Some are a little bit more liberal, but realize that a claim that comes into you, a lawsuit, has a certain response time, and you have to give your insurance company enough time to not only process a claim, hire an attorney, and then create a response on your behalf that's going to be a proper one to make sure everything goes smooth for you on the front end. Know your responsibility and just never ever jeopardize your coverage. So let's talk about the types of policies that are out there. I want you to get that this is the most confusing part for most people when they're first taking out a policy with us, especially if they're first coming out of school. They may have bought one of these policies, a claims made type or an occurrence type, just because someone told them or someone bought it for them and they continued. But it's important to understand what you actually have. So I want to go this route and explain it this way. let me review what you just got to learn about claims-made policies versus occurrence policies. Remember, with a claims-made policy, an alleged injury must take place on or after what's known as the retroactive date, which is the same as the first date you ever had that claims-made policy. And the policy has to still be active in order to be covered. Any break in the policy results in a loss of coverage unless you purchase what's known as tail coverage. So if you ever lapse the policy, you in essence give up every single piece of coverage you had from day one. You can't keep part and lose part. You either have it or you don't. So never, ever, ever lapse a claims-made policy by being late on your renewal, being late on premiums. Make sure you protect that policy. It is critical. And claims-made policies have a greater risk of being canceled due to past due payments. And remember, those of you that employ other doctors and have claims-made policies on them, if they should ever leave and take care of their policy on their own and 6 months later lapse the policy and lose all of their coverage, they lose the coverage that they had while they were working with you. And if a claim shows up, you both now have a problem. So don't ever cancel the policy without purchasing tail, and make sure you know what you have. Claims-made policies allow you, more often than not, to move from one carrier to another carrier, but you need to have the new carrier keep your original retroactive coverage. And if you don't and you purchase tail coverage, it can be 1.5 to 2 times your annual premium one time to make a purchase for that tail to keep all the old coverage in place forever. You can always make sure that if you're switching carriers, as I said, that the new carrier pick up that retroactive coverage so that you do not have to purchase from the old carrier. And last but not least, there are ways to get free tail coverage. As an example, with our policy, we have a very liberal tail policy option where if you're with us consistently for a minimum of 7 years, you're eligible for that tail to be free whenever you need it. Whereas occurrence policies, an alleged injury has to take place when the policy is active, of course, and the lawsuit or claim, even if the policy is no longer active, as long as the incident or alleged incident took place, your coverage will always be there. So you never have to worry about tail coverage with an occurrence policy. It's built in from the beginning, and it makes it much easier to move from one policy to another without the risk of losing coverage. So occurrence versus claims made, yeah, let's understand that when it comes to meeting your practice and financial needs while keeping your risk down, understand which type of coverage will work best for you. And for new practitioners, what I always say is this: a claims-made policy, the benefit of it is it starts out a little bit less costly than the occurrence policy. Find out what the cost differential is to you and weigh whether you're a risk taker or not versus the amount of difference you're going to be paying on the front end, because once the policy matures over time, there is an insignificant difference between claims made and occurrence. So when it comes down to how much coverage should I get, what is the right amount to carry? Do I need a certain amount to participate in certain insurance programs? Do I have a state that requires a minimum? Well, let's look at the different amounts of coverage. The most carriers start with a 100/300 coverage, and it can go up to 2 million, 4 million. What does that even mean? If we look at 100/300, the 100,000 means the most amount your policy will cover for an individual claim. The 300,000 is what your policy will cover in total for all claims during a policy period. Most chiropractors will never get to that point. It's really about what an individual claim will take up. But also understand that some policies have defense coverage inside the limits. So if you had a policy like that, where $100,000 is available to you, but your defense is inside the limits, you can chew up that whole $100,000 just in defending yourself before having what's available to pay out. Most doctors have a 1 million, 3 million policy. In fact, about 85 to 90% of all of our practitioners have that. And the reason that some don't is because some states, as an example, Louisiana, has a state compensation fund that a lot of doctors participate in. So they're going to have the state amount for coverage, and they're going to have a state fund. I don't want to get into all of that. If you're in one of those states, we'll go through that with you. We're great at educating you and making sure you're taken care of. But just know that you want to sleep at night, and there's a reason most doctors have a 1 million, 3 million policy. Let's look at the supplemental coverages, because most policies in this day and age have coverages for more than if you hurt somebody or you miss something on their x-ray or whatever it is. It's extra coverages. We call it the supplemental portion of the policy. And I alluded to it earlier when I talked about licensing board issues that can arise. But there's also HIPAA issues that can show up in terms of HIPAA investigations, sexual misconduct allegations, insurance audits I mentioned before as billing errors and omission. Cyber liability is a big issue in this day and age, and it needs to be part of your malpractice protection for your defense. And a newer issue that arises is EPLI, which is employer's liability. Example, you fire somebody and they come back and sue you for wrongful termination. Who's going to defend you? I had one of those calls just this morning where a doctor had somebody that they felt needed to be dismissed, but the person was on a disability issue at the time, and there were all kinds of things that you shouldn't have let them go at that moment in time, and now they're suing the doctor. We're now involved defending that doctor because we have all of those things built in automatically to every one of the policies that we sell you. So know what you're getting, know what you need, know what's available to you. A lot of doctors incorporate. So I just want to touch on this for a minute, because if you have a corporation, whether it be an LLC, S corporation, or anything else, you need to make sure your insurance has that corporation listed on your policy. It's a simple reason. If any attorney wants to sue you, they're going to name the corporation as well as naming you too. And if that should ever happen, you don't want your corporation to be left off, because your insurance will not defend your corporation if it's not listed on the policy. And you don't want to be defending it out of your pocket just because you neglected to add it to your policy for free. I hope you get that. If you work for a corporation, some corporation owners will ask you to add their corporation as what's known as an additional insured. But a lot of you use DBAs. So what the heck is a DBA? It just means doing business as. Does a DBA have any liability? No, because it doesn't really exist. It's used more as a marketing name for your company more than anything from a legal perspective. As an example, ABC Chiropractic LLC may have a DBA Feeling Well Chiropractic Clinic, or you may have a master corporation that you just want a cool marketing name for your corporation. So don't confuse that. What do you want to look for when it comes to your malpractice insurance provider? I always say, like in any other purchase you make, You want fast and responsive service, because if you don't get that on the front end, I hope that you don't expect it on the back end. You want comprehensive coverage. I'm happy to say to you that with the ChiroSecure policy, you'll get the most comprehensive package available in the marketplace. You want competitive rates, longevity in the marketplace. You want someone that's going to support the profession, and you want someone that supports your safety and growth in your own practice. And someone that hopefully gives tangible funds to research and advance the chiropractic profession. We fit all of those, but there are others that may fit the niche for you. I hope that we're that right answer. What I want to do is thank you for the opportunity to be of service to you today, and to hopefully add to your education of what you have, what you may purchase now or in the future, and what to look out for when it comes to your own liability and risk management. So I want to thank you for having me today, and I said that I would offer you up our informed consent package. So this is how you do it. Just text to 480-500-6574, and we will send you a link to our entire informed consent packet, giving you instructions of how to implement it, has the informed consent, and it has all the research that backs up what we do and why we do what we do. So we'll be back with you again with another session, and I'll look forward to meeting you again in the future. Thank you.